Hey guys, J77 doing a little bit of reading review. What I'm going to give you my own opinion on a book that I had read when I was little, and I just finished reading just about a day ago. It is Pollyanna. It is written by Eleanor H. It is considered a literature classic, and with many good reasons. I got introduced to this author and the Pollyanna books mainly because of the 1960 Pollyanna adaptation that was done by Walt Disney. It starred Haley Mills along with a lot of great cast members. It was a wonderfully well done movie, in my opinion, one of Disney's best live action family films, which is saying a lot because I have not seen too many good family films coming from them in such a long while, at least in the 90s, that is. Um, this caught my peak interest because I knew from the credits that it was based on a novel, but I didn't know how close and how faithful um, the movie was to the novel. I know they did a humongous amount of changes to try to make the movie more presentable with the times than just being faithful to the book. In fact, they had a fictional town, and the book did not. It was actually, I believe, it was in Maryland that the whole scenery took place. But in any case, they did some major changes, which is not the first time. So there was a lot of adaptation to this movie that did it. I think the last one that made some changes like that was the African version called Polly and Polly Coming Home. I decided, because I was very interested in this book, to look for this book when I was young. And to my surprise, that this book was out of print. There was nobody printing it. I managed to read in the library, but I really wanted to own it, and I find it very difficult to find this book. Now, the book is being reprinted with new authors, so it's now easy to find. I have gotten a hold of the electronic version through Google Books. It was a free download, and I just basically downloaded it and read it. And now that I read it, I'm going to read the sequel, which is called Pollyanna Grows Up. In fact, I decided that after I finish my flashback reviews of a couple movies that I'm slowly going to bring out, I'm going to decide to do a review of the two books, which is one doing right now, and also the second one, as well as the movie adaptations of the movies. The only ones I'm not doing is the books that are not done by Eleanor H. That's because those books are out of print and they have been reissued, and they're extremely hard to find with these books. And I'm not going to make much effort because, in my opinion, the Eleanor H. Porter novels are the true novels. I'm not going to guess the other ones. I heard they were pretty good reads, but they're not easy to find. And to be honest with you, the series truly did end with the second book by Eleanor H. Porter. And as for the movie version, the Japanese version of Pollyanna, I'm not going to look for, and that's because it is a very rare series. It was actually a TV series that spanned 2 seasons, and it had a lot of episodes, and I can't really find these episodes. And I could probably do like if they had like something on YouTube, I could probably do a review of that, but it wouldn't be a fair, simple review. I have to watch the episodes to give a full understanding of what I'm actually looking at. So that's the only one that I'm not going to tap in, but I am going to tap in on the black and white silent film version. I'm going to tap into the Haley Mills version, the BBC and the PBS version, including the African cast version of the Pollyanna series, and give my own take and my own feeling. I have saw those movies, so it's more easier for me just to review them, relook at them, and give my honest, fair review. I might as well start off the bat that this book, I might as well give you my feeling of the characters, the story, as well as my overall opinion of this book. So that way you have a better understanding of how I felt about this book. The story pretty much is basic. Miss Polly Harrington is a woman who lives alone, pretty much isolated herself from the rest of the community. She is very political views. Her actions are all politically driven. She believes that duty and doing something for marriage is important, and she always feels that way. She's very stern. She believes in being punctual. She believes in being, to represent himself in a proper manner. And for a long time, she actually felt that way. That soon changed when she got word that her brother-in-law had passed away, and she has to now make a tough decision of whether to raise her niece, Pollyanna, as her own daughter. There was a lot of resentment for that. She really didn't want to, but she didn't want no one else to have to raise her. She didn't want an orphanage. She knew her duties, even though she really didn't want to, and she has a lot of reasons, which is wrong in the book. Some harsh reasons. She felt that it was her duty to make sure that family members raise family members, and so that pretty much solves that. So she agreed to raise Pollyanna as her own. However, this is not also good news for many other people. Nancy, who is one of the main housekeepers in this book, have decided that she was not very happy to hear it. She actually talked to the gardener, old Tom, and from there you probably get more backstory to what Jeannie Harrington was, as well as how many kids she had, as well as who Pollyanna was. Pollyanna is the daughter of a very rich mother who passed away. They didn't explain how she died. They didn't explain how her father, who was a minister, died. She was growing up in a very poor setting. Her family was not rich. Her father was a minister who got very, very little for his services, and it really brought up the question of can this girl adapt to the setting, as well as the curiosities of the mystery behind Pollyanna and her upbringings. And I say mystery because a lot of stuff started coming out about the mother having to choose another, which was never mentioned to the very end. Also about the other children who died mysteriously. They didn't really get into much details, but she was the one that actually was strong enough to survive. It also brings the question of can Holly Harrington, adapt himself to having a child in the house, because in the very beginning she basically made it clear that the farther away she had with the girl, the better. That is basically keeping her upstairs in the very attic room, making sure she's only seeing when it's necessary seeing, which is dinner time, and when she has to read to her or play a musical instrument or so. A lot of that stuff plays into the part. That's where the question of can she really accept having a child in the house, because let's be honest, Charles is not going to follow that to the T, at least to my knowledge. The time of day she comes to arrive, she's very jitty, she's very happy, she's very, very wonderful. She meets her aunt, and right away there's curiosity in how this girl was, because she's very overexcited, very, very up there in terms of asking so many questions and saying things that pretty much makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. Pollyanna, how can I describe her the best way without actually taking too long? I think I can basically describe it as this. Many people didn't like this character because they thought she was Tootie Gooshoes. A lot of people didn't give this book a chance, and in many reasons, many people didn't give the movie version a chance because of how people have described her. Because whether you know or not, the name Pollyanna is in the dictionary. It means over happy, over exaggerate, always think everything is well and swell, too overconfident. I mean, you name it, it's everything that you can see that's in the book. Anything that's positive, the name Pollyanna is somewhere in that light. In this book, however, I can tell you that that's really not the case. I mean, yeah, she is. She used the word glad a lot in this book, and it tends to be a little bit annoying, but not to the point where you want to, close the book and throw it aside. Pollyanna, the character, is very open in terms of honesty, a little too honest. She speaks a lot. She is way over positive. She is well mannered. And she is always curious about her surroundings. She's always willing to learn more. She does have flaws. There are certain things she doesn't like. She doesn't like when she is described as a fool, and she doesn't. And she kind of not like things that is considered in question what her beliefs is. Because this book, I'm not gonna lie to you, it has a lot of Christian themes to it, but you gotta understand this is a book that was written in the 1800s, so you do have to expect that a lot of stuff that is written here, if you read it now, you can't really get offended because the wordings were different. The meanings of the words were different. I'll give you a perfect example. Queer just means weird and unusual. It doesn't mean the word that we now describe to now. There is one word that wasn't considered offensive back then, may not fly well now, especially for those who don't believe in Christianity or God for that matter, and that's heathen. So that word is used a lot in the book. But in context to the story, it's not like it's just thrown out there. This isn't being thrown out there. There's a reason why it's out there, and if you read the book, you can kind of pick up where they're coming from with that. But these are languages that are constantly being used, and you got to be understanding that this is a time period that was deemed acceptable. So, with that being said, if you guys can live through that, it's not a big deal. It's really not. So, don't let that be a deterrent from the book. In any case, Pollyanna is pretty much a normal child in this book. And the glad game that she plays, as crazy as it may sound, is actually a distraction, as well as keeping minds over things that's not important. And that was really the main focus of the game, is to basically say there are other things you should be glad about. Don't hang around and linger on this one situation. Just, there are other things you can actually do that is more worth your time. And that's what this glad game is all about. It's also something to pretty much avoid her from thinking negatively and dwelling on it. I mean, there was, when she first came in there, she went to the attic, she was very happy, and she was wonderful because she never had a room of her own, so she found a way to be glad for that and was very happy. But when she was finally alone in the attic, there was a scene that caught me a bit by surprise. She was starting to cry because although she was happy to be with her aunt, it was hard because she was still alone. She really did not have anyone, and the feeling of not having her mother and her father really started to sink in deeply, where she almost didn't play the game. And she told her father, like, I'm trying, but it's very hard. I don't understand why it took her. So that's a real child emotion. I think that's an emotion that that shows that, hey, this girl is not a stupid character from any book. That's actual real emotion. And most of the time when you see the story, this character shows emotion very, very well. And her reaction towards things is similar to a curious child. And I think that you can actually relate to this child. That's the main key about this book. Because, let's be honest, this book, with the exception of the first two chapters, was basically introducing us to a couple of characters known as Miss Polly Harrington, Nancy, and old Tom, and then we have Pollyanna coming to the scene. Pollyanna is the strength of this book, and if she's not a strong character, the book just doesn't survive. And this book survived perfectly with this character. When what you see, you can actually relate, and how she talked to people, and how she's able to make people feel good about themselves, even though they themselves have had a real rocky day. she brought great light to their eyes every time they talked to them, and it's because of how she conducts herself. Again, there's a little bit of arrogance to her. She's too honest in many ways. She says things without really thinking about what she's really saying, and that's shown perfectly in this book. And most importantly, was shown very, very well in the Pollyanna book, the first book, was the fact that how she reacted to her aunt, which surprisingly was better written here than it was in the movie. And that is because how they start off. She started off very strict. She really did not want to be near her niece. The only time, like I said, she wanted to be with her niece is where she has to, eat dinner with her at a certain time. Study, read a book to her every hour. Do a musical instrument every hour. It was always when it was something that is that she scheduled. It was never something that you would see her do like a normal family do, like go outside together or have regular calm talk to her. There was always something that was like mandated, and it showed how she slowly let her guard down a bit. It was still very difficult, but she started to slowly let her guard down, where she started to become more human, because Harrington is from a very political family background. And I want to make this off the bat. I didn't hate this character in this book. I didn't think she never was a terrible person. In fact, I think that she fell victim to her own policies that made her very, very cold towards others, because people didn't understand a lot of things that happened. And it wasn't until the end of the book that we realized that she had a lover, which they had a role with, and that was it. And that the fact that the real reason why she didn't like the father, because she didn't want to hear any mentioning of Pollyanna's father, which prevented Pollyanna to show her the glad game. The reason why this happened was because she blamed Pollyanna's father for taking her sister away, which she truly did love. And she never really forgave him for that. So there's a lot of bitterness between that, a lot of animosity just built on that, and the fact that the family never really got along with the Reverend because he wasn't rich. He didn't have the income to support her. That seemed to cause a trickle-down effect where it affected her, even towards the last part of the book. The same effect also happened to another character, Pendleton, John Pendleton, I believe. And John Pendleton was a guy who was very cross. He kept to himself. And it was later revealed that he loved it, Pollyanna's mother, but he didn't love him. And despite all the money he had in the world, he still went with the minister, which left him a very bitter, very soulless man towards anybody in the town. He didn't talk to anybody. He was described as a person who only eats in these restaurants, traveled in many weird heathen countries, and he basically just stood to himself. He only had a dog, and that was it. That, of course, changed when Pollyanna kept greeting herself every time they went to the road. She always kept walking and said, "How you do? How you do?" And they didn't know each other at first, but finally he just gave in and said, "How you doing?" And they started to do a little bit of a interaction. It wasn't the greatest interaction, but it was something to at least keep her off his chest every time. Say hello and keep it moving. Nancy found out about that and explained who John Pendleton was, of course, and how weird he was, and how he had skeletons in his closets, which, by the way, means he has secrets that no one knows or dare to know. Excuse me. Well, and throughout then, we had a new character that was more of a mystery. Jimmy Bean comes into it, and Jimmy Bean, I think this is the only character that I ever seen, exception of probably one adaptation. And this one, he's like the bad boy uh, in this book, and I say why because he actually likes Pollyanna, but actually hates her at the same time. She finds her weird and unusual, and Pollyanna doesn't like to be called weird and unusual. But Pollyanna, with a good heart, wants to make sure he is taken care of because he's an orphan and he doesn't like that lifestyle. He keeps running away from that lifestyle. And of course, Pollyanna thought it was a good idea to take him home with her so Polly could adopt him. And that pretty much backfired with him calling him a beggar boy. And that's, again, still didn't hate her because I knew she had a lifestyle and a certain lifestyle that she is used to growing up to. And of course, being told her off and left. And this is pretty much shows you another one about how Pollyanna truly don't understand the new environment she's in. It's not her fault, but she really don't understand, and no one's really explaining it to her. Nancy, a character that I like, she's described in this book as being nosy, but she has a good heart. She's really cared for the girl more so than anybody else. She's like the big sister of Pollyanna. And she's actually been portrayed much better here than the movie. I'm sorry I keep bringing the movie up, but keep in mind it was a 1961 film that got me involved with this movie, and I have to pretty much say that, hey, I was just stunned on how different the book was. But the movie still rocks, and the book still rocks as well. But I'm just letting you know that in this one, she's from the get-go, she fell in love with this child, and she basically had became the big sister of her, even though there were some things she just quite never understood. But she ended up doing it for the sake of Pollyanna. There's Mrs. Snow, which was portrayed brilliantly. I kind of seen how Mrs. Snow was. She was a sickly old woman who stood in bed, basically miserable. And of course, Pollyanna every now and then, stops by with the cat foot jelly and some lamb broth, and and then basically put some joy in her, as well as giving her a reason to keep fighting on. It was pretty much good. I liked it when they were together. It was kind of fun to see them two interact because you have a person who's very stern, but you also have a person who is very cheerful and is bringing new light to the subject. What else can I actually say about these characters that I actually like? Dr. Chilton, Tom Chilton is a very good character. You get to see a lot about him very early on, and I think they made no effort at all to describe that it was Dr. Chilton who was Pollyanna's lover, even though Pollyanna herself, no, I'm sorry, Miss Polly Harrington's lover, even though Pollyanna herself did not know to the very last chapter. And I'll get back to that later, because that was the only weird part of that book that I actually had a problem with. But it's a small nitpick. I guess one of the things I can say about it is that this book shows how one person affects the lives of so many. It is such a wonderful read. And this is a book that doesn't require violence, doesn't require swearing. It's good old-fashioned storytelling. The characters are fun and real. The story is fun and real. The theme of this book is genuine. It's a glad word used a lot of times, of course, but like I said, it's a book that is basically it's not something that is shoved down your throat as a lot of people tend to believe it is. She is overzealous with it, but she's also has some flaws. I mean, she doesn't like her features. She's described as one have freckles, and she doesn't like the freckles. She really is that cautious of her looks. She has certain things that she questions and why, and that's basically on her own beliefs. And she does have flaws. It's not like she's sitting there cheering all the time. She does show regular emotions. She does get teary-eyed. She does get sad. She does get surprised. She does get frightened. So it's not like she's standing there every day, just basically talking about how the world should be happy. No, there are layers of her in this book that you can actually relate to. Surprisingly, men can relate to her more than the women, because I think surprisingly enough, and this is kind of funny. This book, which was generally for the women demographic, actually works better for the male demographics than I was amazing. And the movie has the reverse effect. The reason why the movie, and I will say it right now, the 1960 Disney's Pollyanna did not do well at all in the box office because many people thought it was just this tooty good shoe movie made for just girls. And when it was later on announced, when it was actually put on television and on cable, you find that more and more men actually like the movie more, which is why I'm a little disappointed that the nostalgia critic, aka Lindsay Ellis, didn't seem to like this movie very much. I think that if she read the book, I think she had a full understanding on what what Pollyanna really meant. But she has her own opinion. I know she has a reason, and I respect this. But I find it very interesting that men actually like the book more than women, and I never really thought that this was supposed to be the other way around. But in any case, I love this character because she was a real character, and so when she had that accident with the motor car, it really hits home. Now, this is the one thing I got to tell you. It does mention it. It never really gave you too much details, and yet when they explain it, she got to actually like what happened, because it never explained how it happened. All we know is Pollyanna ran home, and that was it. I mean, the car. So we don't know if she ran into an old moving vehicle or the car was spun out of control. But we do know she got hit by a car. She was unconscious, and that paralyzed her. And this is where the Glad game really was put to the test, because once she got paralyzed, once she had a realization that she may not walk again, it's when she really started to feel miserable, and she really couldn't find anything to be glad about. And I was like, wow, this is going to be really, very tough. And it wasn't until the people who she touched started touching her. And I think then in the next couple of chapters, you start seeing visitors come in. Pendleton went in, visited her, and even confessed to Polly Harrington that, hey, I just want to let you know, I wanted to adopt your child as my own, but she wouldn't leave you. And that was a pretty much big, powerful part of the chapter, because before the accident happened, John Pendleton wanted to adopt Pollyanna as his own daughter. And it was also revealed that to Pollyanna that it was he who actually wanted her mother's hand in marriage. There's a lot of factors in it. There's a selfish factor, of course, that Pendleton is being selfish. He's trying to fill in heart with someone else's child, and that was not right. But in the end, it all worked out because Pollyanna did not go with him. She found out that Polly indeed truly did care for her and wanted to be with her, wanted her as her own. And she found out from kind of just talking to Nancy about the situation, and because of how Nancy observed how she has been treating, the dog, the cat, and basically her, and basically how she shows things without actually saying things. She knew that she has grown fond of her niece being there, and wish it was shown brilliantly in some of the stories through the time when Pollyanna fixed her hair, through the time they actually interact with each other. It was more, not much as a stranger, but more as a mother-daughter would react to each other, which was very, very well done in this book. But the real test, the real emotion finally came out when she had that car accident. Is when you actually seen Polly just almost lose it. She really, really almost lose it. The dawn that she may have lost her niece since then. The dawn that her injuries, it's permanent. You actually saw the emotion that you actually never really saw throughout this book, because she actually kept it bottled up. She actually tried to hide it. Finally come out, and it really pains me. It really pains me to go through that chapter. But as the chapter going, like I said, people started coming in, giving her their love, telling them they were playing the games, telling them why they was playing the games. And the more she heard this news, she was getting, her spirits started to come up. Even though she pretty much recognized now that her injuries were more serious, because she didn't recognize it at first. She thought it was just broken legs and she'll be better, she'll go back to school. But as the days went by, and after weeks and months and then a year, it finally sunk in that that may not happen. It wasn't until, I think, the summertime, that's where Dr. Chilton had made the call and told him, hey, I know a friend, he had treated someone similar to the injuries that Pollyanna has, and he could possibly make her walk again. But it wasn't easy. Polly, who had a relationship with Dr. Chilton beforehand, didn't want to be reminded of him, didn't want him near her. It wasn't until Jimmy Bean overheard John Pendleton and Dr. Chilton talking to each other that he raced over and told Polly Harrington, hey, you got to let him in. It's a matter of Pollyanna walking again. You've got to let him to see her. And she did. And not only did he got to see her, but they actually got engaged and was later married, which was like, man, all this time was wasted. You guys could have done this sooner. And I guess that's the only time, honestly, I felt that part was a bit rushed, because it happened on one chapter. He came in. Next thing you know, Pollyanna got a new uncle. I mean, that was it. But I guess they didn't want to drag it out any more further. But I could have sworn they could have just made one more chapter to make it better. But that's the author's style of doing it. I'm not going to question that. The final chapter ended with a letter, which was actually pretty good. I actually liked the letter. It explains something that really should be a message to everybody. And I know a lot of people like kind of like, oh, come on, man, how can she be glad at that? But the people seem to miss what she said afterwards. She said in the letter, I'm just going to quote what the book said, that she was glad she lost her legs because it let her realize just how precious her legs were until she didn't have any more. She took them for granted, and only when they were gone did she realize how important it was, and that she really learned to appreciate having them. And it was a very, very touching letter, because it shows how she was handling her treatment, how she was taking small steps, and how she was very, very happy, very, very teary-eyed. And the book pretty much ended like that. Pretty much ended kind of like in a cliffhanger, because you actually did want to know more about her treatment, and that pretty much will lead up to 2. That's pretty much it. The book is excellent. I'm not even going to tell you. If you like classic old-fashioned literature, this is an excellent book. If I will recommend this book to anyone who loves old classic literature, if you want to recommend it as a safe family children's book, especially for girls, give them this book. It's a wonderfully well done written book. It's not boring. You really will fall in love with the characters. And most importantly, even though this book was written in the 1800s, it still has presence today. You can still relate to a lot of things these characters have gone through. The theme of the story is still intact. It's not an old theme. This theme is still rich. There still has some problems that we all face. And the characters are just as real as they were then. I think you really will enjoy this book. I think the only feedback I had is the fact that they didn't give you too much detail of the car accident, which is fine. And the second to last chapter, where all of a sudden he came to visit, Polly Harrington to inquire about Pollyanna's condition, to check the condition. Next thing you know, he's gotten married. There's something missing there. I actually had to read back and make sure that I didn't miss anything, but that actually happened, and that's all I got to say about that. But if I got to give it a grade, number-wise, it'd be a 9 out of 10. It's a very, very well-written book. It's very, very well-written. Eleanor H. Porter, I know she's written other books before. I have to check to see if they're still in print. But if you want to really get a hands-on, I suggest you check it out. You can check it out either if you got a Google account. You can easily check it out through Gbooks. It's free. You can download it there. You can read it anytime you want. You don't have to pay for anything. But better yet, just go check it out. I mean, just go rent it. Go to the library, take it out for the library, take it for a read. I guarantee you it will go by quickly. Like I said, the only knock I think this book will have is the language. And you gotta remind yourself that at that time the language was deemed acceptable. Queer and heathen was acceptable words back then. It's not now, of course, but back then it wasn't really, well, queer wasn't really meant the same way as it is now. So just keep that in mind. Don't get offended if you see that word. It's there, but it's there for a different reason. As for heathen, that's really not surprising because, like I said again earlier in this review, it is a religious style book. Pretty much, there's no hiding that. She is Pollyanna is a Christian. This is written by a Christian, so you can't really get too upset. It's not used in such a way that that is going to go overboard, but it is used for many reasons. Don't exactly agree with it, but it doesn't deter from what the overall book is. So again, it's a 9 out of 10. It's definitely a minus if you want a letter grade. And for many things, it's definitely worth checking out at least once. I'm going to come back with a reading review with Pollyanna Grows Up. That's the next book I'm going to be reviewing. I'm going into Pollyanna Grows Up blind. I have no clue if I'm going to like it or hate it. So this will be a brand new review because I have read it, but I haven't read it, which means I skim through it from time to time. So now I'm reading it fully, and I will give you my full feeling of this book. Hopefully, if it's like anything in the first book, I have no worries. But until then, this is J77 saying take care.